Blizzard slams the ski lot as I pry a shaking boy from the lockers, his silver J button clenched. So, who hit him here? Snow in Aspen never just falls. It comes sideways, needling your face, snarling through the pines until the mountain sounds hollow. That night, the resort sirens were already wailing a blizzard warning, orange strobes bouncing off SUVs and rental vans in the upper lot. I was supposed to be done with shift, 30 minutes back at the substation, coffee, paperwork, but dispatch crackled that a groundsman heard crying near the rental lockers behind the west gondola. Out in that weather, a cry can disappear in 10 seconds. So I swung the Tahoe around and went back up. Wind rocked the truck when I opened the door. Spindrift swept across the asphalt like smoke. The resort buildings, timber, big glass, twinkle lights, looked almost cheerful, like nothing bad could happen in a place where rooms ran $2,000 a night. I knew better. I yanked my collar up, pulled the beanie down, and cut across the lot toward the lockers, boots crunching hard over ice. "Pitkin County Sheriff's Office," I shouted into the white blur. "Call out if you can hear me." At first, I thought the crying was the wind. Then it broke. Thin, ragged, definitely a kid. It came from the gap between the back row of metal lockers and the concrete retaining wall. The resort piled snow there. Tonight, it had drifted so high it made a half tunnel. I dropped to a knee, shoved snow aside with my gloves, and shined my light in. He was there. Jammed in like somebody had tucked him out of sight. 6, maybe. Cheeks roared to pink, eyelashes iced. No hat, just 2 long blonde hair plastered to his forehead. Thin navy sweater, jeans wet to the thigh, boots 2 sizes too big. And in his right fist, white-knuckled even while he shook, a little silver button the size of a quarter, engraved with a single letter, J. "Hey," I said, lowering my voice. "Hey, buddy, I'm Logan. You're okay now. I got you." He flinched anyway. Not from me, exactly. More like from everything. His eyes darted past me toward the parking lot like he expected someone else to be there. Someone worse. I slid my flashlight down, made the beam softer, and eased an arm in. "I'm going to pick you up, all right? It's too cold to stay. Can you tell me your name?" His lower lip trembled. No words. Just a tiny shake of the head, like talking was dangerous. "All right. That's all right." I got an arm behind his back, felt how light he was, how the sweater bunched over bone. "We'll warm you up first. You can tell me later." I lifted him out, pressed him to my chest so his face was under my chin, and the wind hit us both like a fist. He made a noise then, a panicked little gasp, and clamped the silver button tighter. I could feel the metal through my jacket sleeve. I hustled him to the Tahoe, slid open the back door, and shoved a gray wool blanket aside so I could sit him in the rear seat. The second the heat hit him, he whimpered. That actually scared me more than the crying, the way relief hurt. I cranked the temp, grabbed the shearling patrol coat I kept for mountain calls, and wrapped it around him. On a kid that small, the coat looked like a whole bed. "Better?" I asked. He stared at me. Blue eyes, icy, unfocused, like he was still half in whatever place he'd been left. His lips were pale now, not purple, but his hands shook violently. The coat swallowed everything but his face and one fist. That fist still held the button. I clicked my radio. "Dispatch, this is Sergeant Hale. I have a found child, male, approximately 6, hypothermic risk, nonverbal at this time. Location, Snow Ridge Resort, upper parking lot, west gondola lockers. Requesting EMS to my location. Advise hospital to prep PEDS intake." "Copy that, Hale," Marcy said from dispatch, cool as ever. "Glacier Valley Children's is on alert. EMT's en route, ETA 7. "Copy." I put the radio down and turned back. "Listen, bud, EMS is coming. They're good folks. They've got warm blankets and hot packs and maybe even cocoa if you're lucky." I tried a smile. "You got a name?" This time he studied me like he was trying to match me to a memory. His eyes dipped to the silver button, then back up. His mouth opened, then closed. A beat later, so quiet I almost missed it over the heater, he whispered, "Jack. Jack." My chest eased, just a hair. "Jack. Okay. That's a strong name." He nodded once, quick, like giving me that was as much as he dared. "Jack, was anyone with you?" I asked. "Mom? Dad? Anybody in a black SUV, red truck, anything like that?" I glanced out at the lot. Just blowing snow, 2 resort plow guys, a line of parked Audis and Subarus buried in white. No frantic parent running toward us, no ski patrol waving. No one. Jack's small face shuddered. He sank deeper in the coat. I tried another angle. I pointed at the button. "That yours? It's nice." He looked at it like it was the only solid thing in the world. His thumb rubbed the engraved J. "Mama sewed it," he mumbled, consonants sticking together. "Your mom sewed it." I kept my voice even though a cold that wasn't from the storm slid down my spine. "So your mama knows about you. That's good. We're going to make sure she knows you're safe." The kid's jaw clenched. Not disbelief. Fear. I heard the siren before I saw the rig, a distant warble under the wind that grew until red and white lights cut through the night. Aspen Fire's ambulance crawled up the drive, chains on tires clicking. One of the paramedics, Ty, big guy, beard, kind eyes, jumped out pulling a bag. "What do you got, Hale?" he called. "Male, 6, exposure, possible trauma history," I said, switching to professional cadence, was concealed behind rental lockers. Nonverbal initially, gave name as Jack. No guardian on scene, no visible bleeding chun, but he's cold to the touch, clothes soaked. Ty was already at the door. "Hey, champ," he said to Jack, gentle. "We're going to take you for a ride, warm you up. You like fire trucks?" Jack recoiled, eyes jumping to me like I was the only anchor he had. His fingers dug into the shearling, but he didn't let go of the button. I put a hand on his shoulder. "I'll ride with you," I told him. "Promise. I won't let you go alone." That did it. His shoulders dropped half an inch. Ty shot me a look that said, "You sure?" I nodded. If whoever left him here was still around, I wanted to stay close to the only witness I had. We transferred him fast. Warm blankets, pediatric-size O2 mask sitting unused on the bench in case, pulse ox clip on his finger. Jack endured it, but didn't like the medical smell from Ty's bag. I filed that away. Smells could trigger things in kids with trauma. Before I climbed in, I swept my flashlight back toward the locker row. Wind had already half-filled the gap we'd pulled him from. If I hadn't gotten there in time, another 20 minutes and that drift would have hidden every trace of a boy named Jack with a silver button. As I shut the ambulance door, a thought hit me hard and unwelcome. Kids that age don't end up stashed behind lockers at a luxury resort by accident. Someone had brought him up the service road, walked him past cameras, and put him out of sight. Someone who knew the property. I sat beside Jack as the rig lurched forward, snow hammering the windshield. He leaned into my side like he'd finally decided I was real. The button glinted in the overhead light, small and stubborn. Who hides a 6-year-old in a blizzard? Glacier Valley Children's Hospital sat high above town, its glass atrium glowing faintly through the storm. When we rolled into the bay, the world outside looked like static on a broken TV. Snow gusted sideways, rattling the doors as Ty helped me carry Jack in. The boy clutched the silver button like it was oxygen. Inside, heat hit us in a rush. Sterile, humming, too bright after the whiteout. The place smelled of antiseptic and lemon cleaner. Jack's breathing went shallow, his fingers digging into my sleeve. "It's just the air filters, buddy," I murmured, but he was already folding in, that smell dragging him somewhere else. Eyes wide, unfocused, scanning corners as if expecting metal walls to close in. A nurse hurried over, blonde hair pinned tight, name badge flashing Sophie Brandt, RN. "Let's get him to Peds. We have a warming suite ready." We moved through halls lined with winter coats hung over radiator rails. Jack's bare hand brushed the wall once, then jerked back like it burned. Sophie noticed. "You okay, sweetheart?" He didn't answer, just turned his face into my coat. Sophie's tone softened. "First time in a hospital?" "He's terrified of the smell," I said. "Could be memory trigger." She looked up at me then, steady, perceptive eyes. "You a parent?" "Used to be." The words came out before I could stop them. Her expression flickered, but she didn't pry. In the warming room, Sophie dimmed the lights, drew the curtains halfway. Jack sat on the bed's edge wrapped in the shearling coat. Heat lamps glowed low amber. His damp hair curled against his neck. I crouched down beside him. "They're just going to check your temperature, okay? Nothing else without me right here." He nodded faintly. The monitor beeped once. 95.2 degrees. Not deadly, but close enough to scare anyone who's seen exposure before. Dr. Mendez came in, a compact man with calm hands. "Evening, Sergeant. Heard you pulled off a miracle up there." "Don't know about miracle. He's lucky I was stubborn." Mendez smiled thinly. "We'll run basic labs, warm fluids. No signs of fracture, but bruising here." He lifted Jack's wrist gently. "Old, maybe a week. And this?" He pointed to faint rope marks near the cuff. I felt something in me harden. "You're saying he was tied?" "Could be restraint. We'll document it either way." Sophie set a stuffed fox beside him from the supply shelf. "Here, Jack. He can keep you company." Jack stared at it, then at her. For a second his guard cracked, his lip trembled. "Mama had one," he whispered. "What was her name?" Sophie asked softly. "Elise." The name hit like a signal flare. I stood straighter. "Elise Monroe?" Jack blinked up at me. "Yeah." Mendez looked at his clipboard. "We'll note that for intake." I stepped into the hallway, called dispatch. "Marcy, run a check on Elise Monroe, possible local resident, mother of minor Jack Monroe, age 6. Prior incidents, missing persons, anything." She came back quick. "Copy, Logan. Elise Monroe filed civil suit 6 months ago against Ethan Rowe, GM of Snow Ridge Resort, claiming unsafe conditions. Fractured leg from malfunctioning liftgate. Case pending. She missed her last hearing 2 weeks ago. Judge issued bench warrant for failure to appear. Any sign she skipped town? No registered address after October. Credit cards inactive. Could be shelter system. You thinking related?" Too soon not to think it. When I returned, Sophie was adjusting Jack's IV line. She caught my expression. "You found something." His mother had reason to fight Rowe. Rowe's the kind of man who doesn't like being sued. She hesitated. "I know. I used to work for him." That made me pause. "At the resort?" "Until 3 months ago. Rowe runs everything like a private fiefdom. Staff contracts, guest medical reports, shipment logs. He kept digital copies of everything in-house. Said it avoided leaks." "Shipment logs?" "Medical equipment, chemical supplies for the spa, even the de-icer on the service roads. He'd sign off himself. Odd thing is, a week before I quit he ordered a maintenance crate marked confidential. Weight didn't match contents list. Delivery went to the old warehouse by the North Ridge." "The one closed since 2018? "That's the one." She glanced at Jack through the window. "Whatever's happening, I don't think he was just lost." Her pager beeped. She excused herself. I watched her go, mind racing. Warehouse, rope marks, mother suing the boss. Later, while Jack slept under the heat lamps, I wandered down to the hospital cafe for burnt coffee and made a few calls. One to the sheriff, get a warrant rolling on that warehouse. Another to an old army buddy turned investigator, just to float Rowe's name. By 3 a.m., the storm had eased. The parking lot lights glimmered off a foot of new snow. I went back to check on Jack. He stirred when I entered. "You still here?" he murmured. "Wouldn't leave you," I said. He reached into the coat pocket and held out the silver button. "Mama said, 'This keeps me brave.'" I looked at the engraving, the letter J catching the lamplight. She was right. He closed his eyes again, and for the first time since I found him, his breathing was even. I stood there listening to the monitor's hum, thinking how the smell of disinfectant still lingered, how it made him flinch. I couldn't shake the image of that bunker he seemed to remember. Metal walls, rope, fear. If the warehouse matched his memories, we weren't dealing with a lost child. We were looking at something deliberate. Outside, snow slid off the roof in soft thuds. My phone buzzed. Text from the sheriff. Warrant approved. Meet me 0700 at the Northridge warehouse. I looked back at the boy sleeping under the shearling, the button glinting on the blanket like a tiny beacon. The storm was over. The real one was just beginning. Morning broke sharp and blue over Aspen, the kind of clarity that comes after a storm scrubs the world clean. The resort valley looked almost innocent again. Fresh powder glittering on the lodge roofs, skiers already queuing at lifts as if nothing terrible had happened 12 hours earlier. But down the access road the sheriff's Tahoe waited in the shadow of the North Ridge, exhaust fog curling into the air. I pulled up beside it and climbed out. Sheriff Ruth Kane leaned against her truck hood, gloved hands wrapped around a travel mug. "You look like hell, Logan." "Didn't get much sleep." "Kid stable?" "Yeah. Warmer, fed, still jumpy." She nodded once, flipping her badge chain back under her parka. "Let's see what this closed warehouse is hiding." The place sat a quarter-mile off the maintenance trail, a squat steel building sunk into snowdrifts, camouflaged by pine. The sign still read Property of Snow Ridge Resort. Authorized staff only, but the paint was blistered and half buried. Kane lifted the latch. Locked, but fresh padlock shine told its own story. She handed me the bolt cutter from the back. When the lock snapped, a low metallic echo rolled inside. Cold air rushed out, tinged with oil and something faintly chemical. We stepped in, flashlights cutting through the dim. The main floor was stacked with ski gear crates, cleaning drums, snowmobile parts, standard maintenance clutter. But toward the back, under a tarp, the concrete had been cut clean into a square panel about 3 feet wide. A ring bolt protruded from the slab. I knelt, brushing dust away. The rope marks around the ring were fresh. "Trap door," Kane murmured. I nodded, finding the recessed latch. When we lifted, hinges groaned, exhaling a breath of stale air. Metal rungs disappeared down into black. "Jesus," Kane said quietly. I lowered the flashlight. 20 feet down, a compact chamber. Unfinished cement, fluorescent light still flickering from a portable generator. On one wall, insulation board lined like a cell. On the other, a small folding bed, a pile of crayons, an empty juice box. "Kid wasn't imagining it," I said. "This is the bunker." Kane's jaw set. "Call CSU. We lock this down." I snapped a few quick photos. The rope coil, scuffed boot prints, a paper scrap wedged near the generator, a partial shipping label, row 03-12, maintenance. By the time our techs arrived, I was already on the phone to Sophie. She answered in a whisper, background noise like hospital intercoms. "Logan? We found where he was held." Silence, then. "You're sure?" "Rope, cot, even crayons. The smell he panicked at. It's here. I need those shipment logs you mentioned." "I'll get them from storage. Rowe used personal credentials. I can print timestamps." She hesitated. "There's something else. A court clerk from district called the hospital this morning, asking if a minor under protective medical evaluation had been admitted. Used Rowe's internal extension by mistake." My stomach dropped. "He's already fishing." "Be careful, Logan," she said quietly. "Rowe's got money, and friends who like it that way." By afternoon, CSU had sealed the site. Kane was coordinating with the DA. I drove back toward town, mind grinding through angles. Lawsuit, missing mother, forged paperwork. If Rowe arranged that trap door, it wasn't to hide a random child. It was to erase evidence. At the hospital, I found Sophie in the staff lounge. She laid out a stack of glossy printouts, delivery schedules, sign-offs. Each page bore Roe's digital initials. The last one read, Special Equipment Transfer, Medical Evaluation, J. Monroe. He used the court clerk's routing number, she said. It looks official if you don't look close. I leaned over the page. The seal watermark was wrong. State crest mirrored. Subtle enough only a trained eye would notice. Forgery, I muttered. He moved the kid under fake orders. And probably paid the clerk to back it up, she said. I can testify if it comes to that. You'd risk your license. Her eyes steadied on mine. If I stay quiet, I'm complicit. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Drop the investigation, Hale. The boy's safe. Let it lie. No signature. Just coordinates pinned to the resort's executive lodge. I showed Sophie. He's not subtle. He's provoking you. Maybe, or maybe he's nervous. That night, Aspen's streets glittered under refrozen slush. I parked across from the lodge watching SUVs come and go. Behind the frosted windows, executives laughed over bourbon. I thought about Jack asleep upstairs at Glacier Valley, about the way he whispered Mama in his half-dreams. When I finally went in, the concierge tried to block me. Private event, sir. I flashed the badge. Not tonight. The lobby smelled of cedar smoke and money. At the far table, Ethan Rowe turned, mid-toast. Mid-40s, tan year-round, perfect teeth. The kind of man who believed snow existed for his brand image. Sergeant Hale, he said smoothly, setting down his glass. To what do we owe this pleasure? Routine follow-up, I said. A child was found on your property last night. He feigned confusion. A child? Behind the west gondola lockers. Ah, tragic, yes. I read the incident brief. Poor thing. You think he wandered from town? I leaned closer. You forged relocation papers. You signed off on a sealed maintenance crate that matches the size of that bunker. You want to keep pretending? For a fraction of a second, his jaw tightened. Then the smile returned, polished as the marble bar. Sergeant, those are dangerous accusations. I suggest you enjoy the slopes before retirement turns you paranoid. Enjoyment's not really my field. I laid a photo on the counter. Trapdoor, fresh rope, Roe's initials visible on the tag. Recognize your own signature? The room went quiet. He stared at it too long. Then he chuckled, low. Careful, officer. People who dig too deep in avalanches don't always come back up. I didn't blink. I've spent my life in storms. When I left, the air outside was colder than before. My breath rose white against the glass where his reflection lingered. On the drive back, snow started again. Soft flakes under the headlights. I kept seeing Jack's small hand around that button, his whisper, Mama said this keeps me brave. Maybe she'd left him a clue. Maybe that button was more than a keepsake. Back at my cabin, I set the button under the desk lamp. On the rim, almost invisible, was a groove. I twisted gently. The back popped open, a micro SD chip tucked inside. I sat back hard, pulse climbing. Someone had hidden evidence in a child's hat. I locked the cabin door behind me and drew the curtains. The storm outside was quieter than my heartbeat. On the desk, the tiny SD chip gleamed under the lamplight, no bigger than a fingernail. Whoever had hidden it inside the button knew exactly what they were doing. Just enough space for files, but not enough to be noticed. I slid it into the old department laptop. The drive clicked, Word, and a folder appeared. Ash Roe Hash Archive. Inside were 4 video clips, all time-stamped within the last month. The first showed a dim, concrete room, the same one under the warehouse. The camera angle was fixed high, security style. A small shape sat on a cot. Jack. He wasn't crying. He was drawing on the wall with chalk, tracing the letter J over and over. Off-screen, a voice said, "Just one more test, then you can see your mom." It was Roe's voice, no mistaking it. Smooth, commanding, patient in a way that felt practiced. I stopped the video before my hands shook the keyboard. The next clips were logistical: shipment manifests, scanned forms, access badges. And the last one, a cell phone video from outside the courthouse, Elise Monroe, her legs still braced, holding paperwork, arguing with someone in a gray suit. The caption read, "Transfer order approved. Sign here or lose custody." Elise's voice cracked through the wind on the video. "You can't take my son!" I sat there, watching the frame freeze on her face, rain streaking down the lens. She was terrified, but not for herself. I backed up the files to a flash drive and called Sheriff Kane. "I've got video proof Roe was detaining the kid. You'd better get the DA out of bed." Her voice came through steady but grim. "Bring it in now." "Not yet," I said. "If he knows we have it, he'll burn every server in that resort. You're not planning to play hero, Logan." "Not hero, just buying time." A silence, then, "You've got 2 hours." I pocketed the drive and headed for the hospital. The night nurse waved me through. Sophie met me near the pediatric ward, eyes red-rimmed but sharp. "Jack's asleep. I told him you were checking on his mom." "Good," I said, "because I think we just found her voice." I handed her the flash drive. She plugged it into the nurse's station computer and watched the first video. By the end, she had both hands over her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He recorded it. All of it." That button was her insurance. Elise must have sewn it there when they took him. She probably never thought he'd make it out alive. Sophie blinked fast, tears slipping down. "Roe made her disappear. The court clerk falsified everything under the guise of medical relocation. Which means the clerk's next," I said. "I'll find him." She caught my arm. "You're not going alone. Someone has to stay with Jack. If Roe gets wind—" "I can handle him," she said, with a certainty that stopped me. "He used to underestimate me. Not anymore." The courthouse in downtown Aspen was empty at that hour except for janitors and the echo of snowplows outside. The clerk's office sat dark behind glass doors. But inside, a lone desk lamp glowed. The man behind it was mid-40s, thinning hair, nervous hands flipping through a folder. Martin Klein, district records officer. He looked up when I entered, eyes wide. "Sergeant Hale, what are you? This office is closed." "Then let's open it," I said, flipping my badge. "You authorized a relocation order for minor Jack Monroe, signed under Judge Watterson's stamp. Only that stamp was used on a Sunday. Judges don't work Sundays." He swallowed. "That must be a clerical error." "Yeah, except your signature matches every fake document Roe used to cover his tracks. I've got video evidence tying him to unlawful detainment. And you—" I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You get one chance to choose a side." Klein's eyes darted to the hall. "He said it was a custody dispute," he whispered. "He paid me cash. I didn't know the boy was missing." "You knew enough to forge a court seal." He rubbed his face, panic cracking through. "You don't understand. Roe's people, if I talk, they'll bury me." "Not if we bury him first." That's when the elevator dinged. Footsteps echoed. 3, maybe 4 men. Klein froze. "Is there another way out?" I asked. He pointed toward the records archive, trembling. "Back corridor, east stairwell. Go, now." He bolted. I killed the lamp and ducked behind the file wall. The door opened. A man in a black coat stepped in, scanning with a small flashlight. Roe's private security. They moved silent and coordinated, flashlights slicing through the stacks. I crouched, easing my pistol free but keeping it low. Not here, not yet. Klein's shoes squeaked somewhere down the hall. A shout followed. I sprinted after it, gun drawn. When I turned the corner, one of the guards had him pinned against the exit door. "Enough!" I barked. They turned, startled by the badge and the weapon. "Back off!" The lead guard hesitated, professional enough to know the risk. But then a new voice cut through the stairwell, smooth and chillingly calm. "Sergeant Hale, always in the wrong place at the wrong time." Ethan Roe stood halfway down the steps, coat immaculate despite the hour, snowflakes melting on his shoulders. "You have something of mine," he said. "You mean the proof you kidnapped a child?" His smile didn't move his eyes. "You have no idea what's at stake. Walk away, and I can make your retirement very comfortable." I raised my weapon, not interested in comfort. The next moment happened fast. Rowe gestured, one of the guards lunged, and I fired. The bullet hit the stair rail, shattering wood and sending them scattering. Klein ducked under the swing bar and fled into the snow. I backed out after him, radioing Kane as I ran. "Shots fired! Courthouse basement! Rowe's on site with armed personnel!" By the time backup arrived, Rowe was gone, vanished into the white blur of Main Street like a man who'd rehearsed his escape. Klein was found 2 blocks away, shaking, frost on his coat. He handed Kane a small flash drive of his own. Documents, bank receipts, and messages between him and Rowe. Enough to corroborate everything. But as I watched the paramedics load him into the ambulance, I couldn't shake the unease in my gut. Rowe hadn't tried to kill me. He'd let me live, which meant he was planning something bigger. Back at the hospital, I found Sophie pacing outside Jack's room. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, but her eyes flicked toward the window. "Someone's been calling the front desk asking for our patient under the alias JM. I told them he was transferred, bought us time." Good thinking. Inside, Jack stirred awake, sensing us. He reached for the button again. It was empty now, just a shell. I knelt beside him. "Hey, champ, that button you carried? It helped us catch the bad guy." His gaze softened. "Can I see Mama soon?" I met Sophie's eyes. "We're working on that." Outside the window, snow began to fall again, thin and slow, like the mountain was holding its breath. By morning, the blizzard had quieted to a whisper. The streets of Aspen were glazed in pale sunlight, fresh snow sparkling like nothing bad had ever touched it. But my gut said the calm was fake. Rowe wasn't the type to retreat. He was the type to regroup. At Glacier Valley, the pediatric wing was quieter than usual. I checked in at the nurse's station, flashing my badge. Sophie was already there, fatigue in her eyes, a coffee gone cold by her elbow. "Jack slept a little," she said. "Had a nightmare just before dawn. He kept saying, they took her down the stairs." "Stairs?" I echoed. She nodded. "He pointed toward the East Mountain Ridge on the resort map in the playroom. He's starting to remember, Logan." That changed everything. Memory meant testimony. Testimony meant Rowe was cornered, if we could keep the kid breathing long enough to talk. I took a chair by the window outside Jack's room. The glass still held a faint frost rim, the kind that melted slowly under the morning light. Down below, a van idled too long at the curb. White, unmarked, driver in a dark coat pretending to read his phone. My instincts kicked in. I radioed the front desk. "Get hospital security to the north lot. Possible surveillance vehicle." The van pulled away fast, tires spitting snow. Sophie came up behind me. "He's watching the hospital now?" "Or trying to scare us." I turned to her. "Has Elise been located yet?" "Any word from Kane?" "She's working with State Patrol," Sophie said. "There's a tip. A woman matching Elise's description checked into a women's shelter in Glenwood Springs 2 nights ago. She used an alias, E. Moore. That's close enough to be her. She's scared to come forward. The intake worker said she keeps asking if the man with the cameras found her yet." I pressed a hand over my face. "Rowe's reach is longer than we thought." Sophie hesitated, then added, "Beatrice Langley's people reached out this morning. She's offering digital forensics support. Said she's seen Rowe pull the same kind of cover-up in the biotech sector years ago." Langley, the med tech billionaire? She runs the foundation that funds half this hospital. If she's stepping in, Rowe just made an enemy who can afford to fight back. By noon, I was sitting across from Beatrice Langley in her Aspen penthouse, a glass-walled box that looked straight at the mountains. Mid-50s, silver blonde hair, sharp as the edge of a scalpel. "You found a button, a chip, and a boy," she said, scrolling through the evidence file on her tablet. All of it ties to Roe's resort servers. Can you get in? I asked. She smiled faintly. You don't ask if I can, Sergeant. You ask how long before he knows I did. Behind her, 2 IT analysts were already at work, screens flickering with encryption traces. Langley leaned back, crossing her arms. Roe runs a network of shell companies for liability cover. One of them funneled payments to the court clerk. We'll pull every transaction in 12 hours. You understand this makes you a target. I built pacemakers that survived ransomware attacks, she said. I'll survive one executive with a god complex. Her confidence was unnerving, but exactly what we needed. That afternoon, I drove back to the hospital. Jack was in the playroom, drawing with crayons under Sophie's watch. The silver button shell now hung from a string around his neck, empty, but still his anchor. He looked up when I entered. You found my mama? Almost, I said, kneeling beside him. She's safe, but we need her to trust it's really over. You helped us get this far, Jack. He nodded solemnly. Mama said people don't listen to poor folks. I swallowed. They're listening now. Sophie crouched next to him. What else do you remember about the stairs, sweetheart? Jack's crayon stopped mid-line, his eyes unfocused. There was water on the floor, and a man with a black watch. Mama screamed. I wrote that down. Black watch. Roe always wore one. Expensive, Swiss, distinct. A symbol of control. Before I could press further, my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Unknown. You're trespassing in business above your pay grade. The boy isn't yours to keep. No name, no trace. I snapped a photo of the screen, sent it to Kane. She replied immediately. Get the kid under police protective custody now. TRO, being filed as we speak. I turned to Sophie. We're moving him to a secure wing. No visitors except authorized law enforcement. She nodded, but her hands trembled slightly. If he's bold enough to text you, he'll try to walk through the front door. She was right. At 6:45 p.m., as dusk washed the hospital in gold, a commotion broke out near reception. 2 men in the black coats were demanding entry under legal authorization for transfer. Their paperwork looked official. Court seal, medical order number, same format as the forged ones from Roe. I arrived as security stalled them. Let me see those, I said. The men hesitated, but handed them over. The seal watermark shimmered wrong again. Mirrored. Fake, I said flatly, and you just tried to pass federal forgery across state lines. One of them shifted, hand inching toward his coat. I raised mine faster, badge and sidearm visible. Don't. Sophie appeared behind me, voice calm but cutting. Gentlemen, you're frightening patients. I suggest you leave before the sheriff gets here. They did, but not without a final glare that promised this wasn't done. When the doors shut, the lobby fell silent except for the heater hum. I turned to Sophie. They're testing our perimeter. She exhaled shakily. You really think he'll come himself? I think his pride won't let anyone else finish the job. At midnight, Kane called. Langley's data pull worked. We've got the whole thread. Emails, payment chains, court clerk logs. Enough for an indictment. I glanced through the hospital window at the boy asleep under dim light. Good, because he's running out of time to stay hidden. You'll get company soon, Kane said. Deputies en route with a restraining order and protective detail. But an unease crawled up my spine. What about Elise? Kane hesitated. We reached her. She's ready to come in, but she's scared someone's tailing her. My patrol's picking her up now. Keep her off main roads. Roe's got eyes everywhere. As I hung up, a shadow flickered in the hallway mirror behind me, just for a second. When I turned, the corridor was empty. But the elevator at the far end had just begun to rise. No call light, no noise, just motion. I tightened my grip on my holster. The storm outside had finally stopped. Inside, it was about to begin again. The elevator stopped on the pediatric floor with a muted chime that felt too loud in the silence. My hand was already on my holster when the doors slid open. No one stepped out. Just an empty gurney, pushed halfway inside, the white sheet trailing like a flag. Sophie appeared at the far end of the corridor, eyes wide. "Logan?" I motioned her back. "Stay with Jack." I edged toward the elevator, gun low, heart drumming a steady beat I couldn't quiet. The hallway lights flickered. Power cycling, not failure. A sign someone was inside the system. Then the intercom crackled. "Paging Dr. Rowe to Pediatrics, room 12. The voice wasn't real. It was a recording spliced from earlier announcements. Someone was testing how far they could reach. Sophie's voice trembled from behind me. "He's in the building." 5 minutes later, Sheriff Kane's unit screeched into the loading bay. 2 deputies flanked her, rifles ready. I met them near the security office. "Rowe's got access codes," I said. "He's hijacked the announcement system." Kane scanned the monitors. Several feeds dead. Static pulsing. "He's cutting eyes before he moves. Classic diversion. We've got patrols sealing every exit." "What about Elise?" "She's still en route, 20 minutes out." "Then we hold the line here." Sophie joined us, pale but composed. "Jack's awake. He heard the announcement. He said, 'That's the man from the stairs.'" Kane exhaled sharply. "All right. We bunker them down in the imaging suite. It's reinforced concrete, 1 entry door. You and Brandt stay with the boy. I'll sweep the east wing." She turned to go, but I caught her arm. "Ruth, if he's desperate, he'll aim for me. He needs the drive." "Then make sure he doesn't get it." The imaging suite smelled faintly of ozone and coolant. Sophie sat with Jack in the corner, wrapping him in a fresh blanket. His fingers toyed with the empty button shell around his neck, tracing the edge again and again. "Hey, champ," I said, crouching to eye level. "Remember how your mama told you to be brave?" He nodded, barely. "This is that part again. You and me, we stay quiet, and we listen. If you hear anything weird, you tell me first, okay?" He whispered. "You'll stay here?" "I'm not going anywhere." Sophie met my eyes over his head. "If he's armed? Then he'll find me before he finds you." She looked like she wanted to argue, but didn't. 10 minutes passed. The hum of the MRI magnets masked distant footsteps. Then, from the corridor outside, a soft chime, the sensor on the outer door. Sophie stiffened. I motioned her to cut the lights. The room plunged into amber emergency glow. Shadows stretched long across the walls. A second chime, then a whisper through the intercom. "Sergeant Hale, you've made this very difficult." Rowe's voice, calm, unhurried. I stepped to the doorway, gun drawn. "It's over, Ethan. The DA's got your files. The court clerk flipped. Whatever you're doing, you're only making it worse. I made this entire town, Logan. You think a small-town sergeant and a nurse can take it from me? Tell that to the kid you left in a freezer." Silence. Then the faint click of his shoes on tile. He was closer. I told Elise I'd pay her off. She wouldn't listen. She thought the truth mattered more than our agreement. "You want to know why I hid the boy? Because she was going to ruin everything for both of us." His voice hitched slightly. The first crack. "You don't get to justify what you did," I said. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. I could hear his breathing now, steady and controlled. Then, a low metallic sound, gun slide. Sophie clutched Jack tighter. I raised my weapon. "Open it, Sergeant," Rowe said quietly. "Let's end this without more damage." "You first." We stood in stalemate, neither moving. The overhead lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized. Somewhere down the hall, Kane's voice rang out. "Police! Drop it!" Followed by the crash of something metal hitting tile. Rowe's attention shifted for half a heartbeat. That was enough. I slammed the door open, catching him square with my shoulder. The gun clattered away. We went down hard, sliding across the corridor floor. He recovered fast, grabbing for the weapon. I drove my elbow into his ribs. Then the jaw. He swung back, connecting just below my temple, white flash ringing ears, but I kept hold of his wrist. Kane's deputies appeared at the corner, weapons raised. "Drop it!" Rowe froze, panting, blood on his lip. "You think this ends with me?" he rasped. "You can't protect them forever." Kane moved in, cuffs clicking around his wrists. "You'll have plenty of time to explain that to a judge." He smirked. "I built that judge's career." She didn't flinch. "Then you'll both fall together." An hour later, Roe was loaded into a sheriff's SUV, face pale against the flashing lights. Hospital security swept the wing twice before clearing it. The relief in my chest didn't feel like victory, just exhaustion. Sophie met me in the hallway, still in scrubs, eyes glassy with fatigue. "Is it over?" "Not yet." "But he's in custody." Jack peeked from behind her, voice small. "He won't come back?" "No," I said. "He won't." He reached up, tugged the silver button string over his head, and held it out to me. "You keep it now." I knelt. "That's yours, Jack." He shook his head. "Mama said brave people pass it on." The metal was warm from his skin. I closed my hand around it. "Then I'll hold it until she can take it back." Sophie's hand brushed Jack's shoulder. "He wants to see his mom," she said softly. "She's on her way." For the first time all night, the kid smiled. A tiny, exhausted thing, but real. Outside, dawn stretched over the peaks, turning the snow pink and gold. Kane joined me by the ambulance bay, steam rising from her coffee. "Langley's team turned the files over to the FBI," she said. "Looks like a multi-state fraud ring buried under his resort business. We'll be untangling this for months." "Let's just make sure the Monroes get to live normal lives again," I said. She nodded. Elise should arrive any minute. State patrols escorting her in. I slipped the silver button into my pocket, the engraved J catching the morning light. The metal felt lighter now. "Storm's finally clearing," Kane said, watching the sun break through. "Yeah," I murmured, "but it left a hell of a drift." Inside, through the glass, Jack and Sophie stood by the window watching the sunrise. For a second, the reflection made them look like a family, and somewhere down the road, a convoy was bringing Elise home. By the time the convoy reached Aspen, dawn had burned off the last of the storm haze. The patrol cars came first. Red and blue lights sweeping over the snow like restless ghosts. Behind them, a gray SUV rolled to a stop under the hospital canopy. I was waiting there with Kane. When the rear door opened, Elise Monroe stepped out. She looked smaller than I remembered from the video, paler, thinner, with a limp that favored her right leg. A wool scarf hid most of her face, but her eyes, they were the same eyes Jack had. Blue-gray, watchful, a little frightened even of the light. "Elise?" I said gently. She blinked against the glare, nodding. "You're Sergeant Hale?" "Logan's fine," I said. "He's safe upstairs." Her hands clenched around the handle of a worn duffel. I didn't think he'd still be alive." Kane's voice softened. "He's been asking for you." Elise exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for months. She swayed, caught herself on the SUV door, then straightened. "I need to see him." We led her through the sliding glass doors, past security guards who lowered their eyes respectfully. The elevator ride was silent except for the hum of the motor and the faint tremor in her hands. When the doors opened, Sophie was already waiting outside the pediatric room. She smiled, gentle, relieved, maybe even proud. "He's awake." Elise froze in the doorway. Jack sat up in bed, wrapped in the same shearling coat. His hair stuck out in every direction, the silver button string now empty against his chest. He turned, saw her, and the world seemed to stop between one breath and the next. "Mama?" The word was so small it barely left his throat. Elise's duffel hit the floor. She crossed the room in 2 strides, dropping to her knees beside the bed, arms around him before he could even climb down. He buried his face in her neck, sobbing soundlessly. She pressed her cheek to his hair, whispering, I'm here, I'm sorry." Sophie turned away, eyes wet. Kane swallowed hard beside me. I stepped out into the hallway to give them space. Outside, the light had shifted, brighter now, reflecting off the mountain ridge. An hour later, Elise and I sat in the visitor lounge while Jack slept again, clutching the stuffed fox Sophie had given him. She told the story in pieces, voice steady but trembling at the edges. After her injury on the ski lift, Rose's company had offered a settlement. One she refused because they'd falsified maintenance records. "I wanted him to fix the lifts, not just buy me off," she said. "The next week, my car was vandalized. A month later, my landlord got an anonymous call warning him about a tenant with medical debts. She'd been forced to move from motel to motel, working nights cleaning offices. When the civil suit was filed, Rose's attorney offered her a medical evaluation for Jack after he came down with pneumonia. "He said it was required for the settlement," she whispered. "I signed the order. I thought it was real." When they took Jack, they promised he'd be in Denver for tests. Then the calls stopped. "I went to the police," she said, "but the paperwork showed I authorized relocation. No one believed me. I ended up at the shelter because I thought if I vanished, maybe they'd bring him back." She looked up at me then, eyes raw but resolute. "You believed him, didn't you? For a while." I didn't lie. I did. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. She nodded slowly, tears threatening. "He kept that button. I told him if we were ever apart, he had to hold it tight. I sewed the chip inside the night before they took him." "You saved him with that?" "No," she said softly. "You did." By afternoon, the DA's office had filed 27 counts against Rowe: fraud, unlawful detainment, conspiracy, evidence tampering. Federal charges were pending. Langley's team released a statement pledging to cover legal costs for every victim tied to his schemes. Kane called it the fastest fall from grace this town's ever seen. But Rowe wasn't done yet. Late that evening, Kane walked into the lounge with her phone in hand. "We've got a problem." She handed me the screen. A news alert blazed across it. "Ethan Rowe transferred to federal custody. Escort vehicle crashes in Glenwood Canyon. Status unknown." Sophie's voice broke the silence. "You mean he escaped?" "Maybe. Or maybe he made sure people think he's dead," Kane said grimly. "We're locking down the hospital until confirmation." Elisa's face drained of color. "He'll come for us." I met her gaze. "Not this time. He's lost his shield." But even as I said it, I felt the weight of that old cop instinct pressing at the back of my mind. Predators, cornered, don't vanish. They hunt in new ways. That night, I walked the hospital corridor outside Jack's room, the floor humming faintly under my boots. Sophie had fallen asleep in the chair beside the bed. Elise curled near the window, her hand resting on her son's. Snow drifted again beyond the glass, soft and harmless this time. I reached into my pocket, turned the silver button over in my palm. The engraved J caught the light like a quiet pulse. It had started as a symbol of fear, but somewhere along the line, it had become something else. Courage, proof, connection. Jack stirred, half asleep, murmuring, "Is it morning?" "Almost," I said quietly. He smiled, eyes still closed. Then we made it. In the hallway, Kane joined me with 2 cups of burnt coffee. "FBI confirms they found Rowe's watch at the crash site," she said. "Charred but identifiable. He's either dead or running without his toys." I looked back at the sleeping family through the glass. "Either way, he's done." "Langley's setting up a trust for the Monroes," Kane added. "Enough to rebuild their life somewhere quiet." "Good," I said. "They deserve peace." She gave me a long look. "You ever gonna take some yourself?" "Maybe after the paperwork," I said, though we both knew better. When dawn finally came, the mountains were clear and blue again. Elise wheeled Jack out into the sunlight, Sophie holding the door open. Kane and I stood back, watching mother and son step onto the snow-dusted terrace. Jack held up the silver button to the sky, letting it catch the light. "Look, Mama," he said. "It's shining again." Elise smiled, tears streaking down her face. "It always will." The air smelled clean. No disinfectant, no fear, just the sharp cold of a morning that promised something new, and, for the first time in months, Aspen felt safe. The morning after the reunion, the hospital settled into a hush that felt like the aftermath of a long storm. Outside, the mountains rose white and quiet, and sunlight spilled across the glass atrium like the world had finally stopped holding its breath. Elise and Jack were moved to a secure recovery suite on the east wing. Big window, mountain view, no public access. Sophie oversaw their care personally, even though her shift was technically over. "He sleeps through the night now," she told me. "No more panic attacks." But she didn't look convinced. Trauma doesn't dissolve overnight. It settles into the corners of the mind like old snow that takes its time melting. Kane had left early for a press conference with the district attorney. She wanted the truth out fast before rumor could twist it. Rose's face was everywhere now. TV, social feeds, news tickers. Missing CEO, faces, federal charges. A digital manhunt had started. Some claimed he died in the crash. Others swore he had the kind of offshore friends who could erase a body and a name in the same hour. I wasn't sure which truth scared me more. By noon, the hospital lobby was crowded with reporters. Kane had ordered strict lockdown, no access beyond the main floor, but cameras still pressed against the glass. Langley's lawyers handled most of it, calm and corporate, talking about accountability and leadership. I stayed upstairs. It wasn't the time for heroes or headlines. In Jack's room, sunlight danced across the floor. He was building something out of blocks, a ski lift, he said, with Sophie's help. Elise sat by the window, sketching mountains on a notepad. Her hair was clean now, her hands steady. "Morning, Sergeant," she said when I came in. "Or is it afternoon already?" "Barely noon," I said. "How's the patient?" Jack grinned, missing a tooth. "Building a lift that doesn't break." "That's one way to fix history," I said, smiling. Sophie looked up from the floor. "He's got an engineer's patience. Not sure where he gets it." "Probably from his mom," I said. Elise's pencil paused mid-line. "Or maybe from the man who didn't give up on him." The room went quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. Small, but real. "You ever think about retiring someplace warmer, Logan?" I laughed under my breath. "I tried. Aspen keeps pulling me back." She studied me. "You don't strike me as someone who knows how to stop moving." "Probably why Kane keeps me on snow duty." Before she could answer, Sophie's phone buzzed. She frowned, reading the screen. "It's Langley's office. They traced one of Rose's shell accounts." "Where?" "Zurich," she said, voice tightening. "Money withdrawn 24 hours ago. Someone's alive and paying cash." Elise looked up sharply. "You mean—" I raised a hand. "Let's not jump ahead. Could be an accomplice moving funds." But even as I said it, I knew Kane would have told me first if Rose's body had been confirmed. The line between alive and gone was still blurry. Later, I walked down to the cafeteria to clear my head. The smell of burnt coffee and reheated soup mixed with antiseptic in a way hospitals never could quite fix. Snow flurries drifted past the windows, light as ash. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number again. "You think she's safe. She's not." Attached was a single photo. The view from the East Wing window. Elise's room. Taken within the last hour. I was moving before I finished reading. When I burst into the suite, Sophie was standing by the window, staring at a small red dot on the glass. Laser sight residue. "It flashed once," she said, voice shaking. "Then gone." Elise had already pulled Jack off the bed, crouched behind the couch, shielding him. "Get away from the window," I said. She didn't need telling twice. I pulled the blinds shut and killed the lights. The hospital's thick glass could stop a thrown rock, maybe even a small caliber bullet, but the sight line meant someone out there had a clear view. Kane was on the line within seconds. "Sniper or decoy?" she asked. "Could be a drone with a laser pointer. Could be worse," I said. "We're moving them now." Her voice hardened. Evac Route B. SWATs on the roof in 10. Sophie gathered Jack's things while I kept the blinds sealed. The kid clutched the stuffed fox, trembling but silent. Elisa's hand found his and squeezed. "Remember what Mama said?" she whispered. "Hold on tight." He nodded. When the tactical unit arrived, the hallway lights dimmed to emergency mode, part lockdown, part stealth. We moved fast, down the service corridors and freight elevators, out through the maintenance bay into an armored van. Outside, the mountain light was harsh, reflecting off snow like mirrors. The world looked calm again. Too calm. I scanned the ridge lines. No flash, no movement. Still, my pulse wouldn't settle. We relocated them to a sheriff's safe house on the edge of town, an old ranger cabin, 2 rooms, fireplace still working. It smelled of pine and wood smoke, a welcome change from hospital sterility. Kane stayed outside coordinating perimeter patrols. Inside, Jack sat near the fire, roasting a marshmallow Sophie had found in a kitchen tin. "This feels like camping," he said, voice steadier now. "Best kind," I said. "No bugs, no bears." Elise looked around the cabin, gaze softening. "I used to dream of quiet like this." "You'll have it again," I told her. She looked up at me. "Do you really believe that?" I hesitated. "I want to." She smiled sadly. "That's enough." Later, after Jack fell asleep and Sophie dozed on the couch, Elise stepped outside with me. The sky was a sheet of stars, the kind you only get after a storm has scrubbed the air clean. Her breath came out in pale clouds. "Do you ever wonder," she said, "why people like Roe get so many chances before someone stops them?" "All the time," I said. "Sometimes the system's too polite for monsters." She looked at me, eyes bright in the cold. "Thank you for not being polite." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. The firelight from inside flickered through the frosted window, painting her face in soft amber. That was when Kane's headlights cut through the trees, her figure jogging toward us, coat half-buttoned. "Logan!" she called. "They just pulled footage from the crash site. You need to see this." She handed me her phone. The screen showed grainy dashcam footage. Federal transport van on the canyon road, headlights bouncing off snowbanks. Then, seconds before the crash, the passenger door opened from the inside. A shape jumped clear. Tall, dark coat, moving fast, and vanished into the trees. The timestamp was 04:12 a.m. Roe was alive. Elise saw the screen and went still. "He'll come for us." I pocketed the phone. "Not if we find him first." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of pine smoke and something faintly metallic, gun oil. It wasn't coming from us. Kane's head snapped up. "Inside, now." The porch light flickered once, then went dark. Somewhere in the woods, a branch cracked, and the mountain, so peaceful a minute ago, suddenly felt alive again, watching, waiting. The crack came again, sharper this time, deliberate, not wind, not animal, the kind of sound that freezes every nerve before your brain catches up. Kane raised her hand, signaling silence. We ducked low along the porch railing, snow crunching under our boots like breaking glass. Inside the cabin, the light from the fireplace flickered against the curtains, making moving shadows. Targets, if anyone was watching. I whispered, "He wouldn't come alone." Kane nodded, eyes scanning the tree line. "He's desperate. He'll try to finish what he started." Through the pines, a figure moved. Slow, controlled. A dark parka, familiar gait, the glint of something metallic near the hand. "Elise," I hissed toward the doorway. "Get Sophie and Jack to the cellar, now!" She hesitated, eyes wide, then scooped up her son and vanished inside without a sound. Sophie followed, pulling the rug aside to reveal the old trap hatch under the floorboards. The same kind of hiding place Jack had once been trapped in, only now it was a shield. Outside, the forest breathed frost. Kane flanked left, circling toward the woodshed. I stayed low, creeping along the side of the cabin until the snow dipped into a shallow ravine. My heart was loud enough to feel in my throat. Then I saw him. Ethan Rowe. He stepped into the clearing, unshaven, eyes hollowed by days of running. The expensive coat was torn, one sleeve stiff with blood. But the arrogance was still there, in the way he straightened his spine, the faint smirk like he was still untouchable. "Logan," he called softly, voice carrying through the cold. "You should have taken my offer." "You should have stayed buried," I said. He laughed once. "You think you won? The FBI will find nothing but scapegoats. Money erases everything. Not this time." I leveled my gun. "It's over." He tilted his head, mocking. "Funny thing about justice, it's just paperwork without witnesses, and paperwork burns easy." Something moved behind him. Another man, smaller, carrying a duffel. I caught the gleam of gasoline cans inside. My stomach dropped. "Ruth!" I shouted. "Fuel!" Kane emerged from the shadows, rifle raised. "Drop it!" Rowe didn't. He turned, grabbed the can and hurled it toward the porch. It hit the snowbank and rolled, spilling a slick sheen of gas toward the steps. He struck a lighter. For a second, everything froze, the flame a tiny, trembling flower in his hand. "Don't," I warned. He smiled. "You took everything from me, let's see what you can save." He dropped it. The whoosh was instant, a serpent of fire crawling up the porch rail. Kane fired once, hitting the can mid-air. The explosion threw snow, ash, and smoke into the night. Rowe stumbled backward, blinded, roaring in rage. I lunged, tackled him hard into the drift. The gun skidded from my hand, spinning into darkness. He fought like a man who'd already decided dying was fine as long as he took someone with him. We rolled, his hand at my throat, my elbow in his ribs. The snow turned crimson where his knife caught my shoulder. Then a crack, a rifle report. Rowe jerked, eyes wide. Kane stood 10 yards away, barrel smoking. He slumped forward, breath rattling once before going still. Smoke curled from the porch as we pulled apart the flaming railing with shovels and snow. Inside, Sophie had already dragged Jack and Elise from the cellar. The boys' eyes were wide, terrified, but alive. Elise dropped beside me, pressing a towel to my shoulder. "You're bleeding." "I've had worse," I said, trying for a smile. Kane stood over Rowe's body, snow hissing as it hit cooling blood. "Let's call it in," she said, "and get the kid out of here before he sees too much." Sophie led Jack inside, whispering something soft that sounded like a lullaby. When the paramedics arrived an hour later, the mountain was quiet again. The fire was out, just a black scar across the porch boards. By dawn, the cabin had turned into a command post. FBI agents, state troopers, medics. Elise sat by the fire with a blanket around her shoulders, Jack asleep against her chest. The glow painted them both in gold. Kane finished giving her statement, then joined me by the window. "You realize what this means?" "Yeah," I said. "No more running for them. Or for you." I looked at her, half smiling through the ache in my arm. "I'm better when I don't stop." She snorted. "That's what scares me." 2 days later, the snow finally let up. Aspen's sky was a deep, forgiving blue. The town started thawing out, shops reopening, lifts humming again. Life pretending it hadn't seen darkness. At the hospital discharge desk, Jack held the silver button out to me one last time. "You still have the inside part?" he asked. "Safe in evidence," I said. He grinned. "Then we both keep half." Elise hugged him close. "Say, thank you, Jack." He turned serious, looking up at me. "Thank you for finding me." My throat tightened. "You did the hard part, kid. You held on." That afternoon, as they left town under quiet escort, I stood in the same parking lot where I'd first found him behind those lockers. Snowmelt ran in little rivers across the asphalt. Somewhere higher up, a hawk circled against the pale sky. Kane pulled up beside me. "You sure you don't want to escort them out personally?" "They'll be safer without a shadow," I said. She nodded. You gonna finally take that vacation? Maybe, I said, but not somewhere warm. She laughed. You're impossible. As her cruiser rolled away, I reached into my coat pocket. The silver button glinted between my fingers, engraved J still sharp. The metal was scratched now, worn from both our hands. I closed my fist around it, the way Jack once did, and looked up at the sun cresting over the ridge. The storm was over. But as the wind shifted down the valley, carrying the smell of thawing pine and smoke, I thought I heard a child's laugh echo faintly from the slopes, a reminder of what survived, of what mattered. Not victory, not headlines, just the simple proof that courage can live in something small enough to fit in a child's hand. 2 weeks later, the snow began to soften. The sun stayed a little longer on the slopes, and the valley took its first cautious breaths of spring. For the first time since that night, the mountain didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a promise. The federal team packed up from the safe house that morning, leaving only footprints in the thawing snow. Roe's body had been formally identified, his assets seized, and his name already being rewritten into corporate obituaries. Aspen moved on the way towns always do, half with outrage, half with relief. I didn't attend the hearings or the press conferences. I stayed on the edge of it all, watching from a distance while the Monroes rebuilt what was left of their lives. Elise found work in town, part-time at the library, something quiet and steady. She told me once that handling books felt like handling time. Soft, careful, always about what you choose to keep. Jack started physical therapy at Glacier Valley twice a week. He didn't need much. Kids bounce back faster than grown men expect. But Sophie kept an eye on him anyway, sneaking him extra pudding cups and coaxing him into laughter that sounded more alive every day. One evening, I found them outside the rehab center. Jack was racing his new sled down a hill too small to be dangerous but big enough to make him feel like he was flying. Elise waited at the bottom, clapping when he slid to a stop, cheeks flushed red from cold. He looked up at me, grinning. "Sergeant Hale, look!" The silver button was back, this time stitched onto his knit cap, bright against the blue wool. It caught the light when he turned his head. "I see it," I said. "Shines better than a badge." He puffed his chest out. "It's for brave people." "Then it's right where it belongs." Sophie came over, brushing snow from her coat. "He's turning into the town's celebrity." "Better that than the town's ghost," I said. She smiled. "Elise wants to stay here." Langley offered her a grant to start an outdoor literacy program for kids, reading and trail hikes. Said Jack could be their mascot. "That woman thinks of everything. She says you're the reason she can." I shook my head. "I just did my job." Sophie studied me, the wind teasing her hair loose from its clip. Maybe. But sometimes doing the job means reminding people the world can still be decent. Her words landed heavier than she meant. I hadn't felt decent in a long time, not since before my divorce, before I learned that saving people doesn't always mean you get saved with them. But watching Jack tumble down that hill again, laughing into the blue sky, I wondered if maybe decency was contagious after all. The following Sunday, Kane called. "We got the final report," she said. "Case closed. The DOJ's already moving the funds to restitution accounts. Thought you'd like to hear it from me." "Appreciate it." "You know," she added, "for someone who keeps saying he's retiring, you have a bad habit of finding unfinished business." "I'm considering early stubbornness a character trait," I said. She laughed. "Try not to make me bail you out of another headline." "No promises." When we hung up, I sat on the porch of my cabin overlooking the frozen ridge. The world was quieter now, no sirens, no searchlights, just the faint hum of thawing streams below. I pulled the button from my pocket. The engraving was dulled, edges smoothed by 2 pairs of hands. I threaded it onto a bit of twine and tied it to a nail above the window, where morning light could find it. It swung gently, catching the sun like a slow heartbeat. A week later, Elise and Jack stopped by before heading out of town for a short trip. She brought a tin of oatmeal cookies wrapped in foil. "The least we can do," she said. "Jack insists they're for brave people only." The boy peeked from behind her, shy but proud. "Mom says brave people help others be brave too." I crouched down. "You believe that?" He nodded hard. "Mama said you kept me safe, even when it was scary." "Your mom kept you safe long before I showed up," I said. "She just needed a little backup." He grinned. "Then we're a team." "Yeah, kid, we're a team." Elise smiled, that quiet, centered kind of smile people earn after surviving storms. "You'll come visit us, won't you? Once the thaw's over?" "I will." She looked around the clearing, snowmelt glistening like glass across the dirt road. "This place, it feels lighter now." "It is," I said. "You helped make it that way." They climbed into their car, Sophie joining them in the passenger seat. She'd taken a new job as part of Langley's Outreach Foundation. When they waved goodbye, the sun caught the little silver button on Jack's hat one last time, flashing bright before the curve of the road hid them. I stood there long after they'd gone, hands deep in my jacket, mountain air cold in my lungs. The ridge looked endless and clean. It struck me then how the world can hold both the worst and the best of us in the same landscape, the cruelty that buries a child in snow and the courage that digs him back out. That's what I'd keep from all of it. Not the arrests, not the reports, just the sound of that boy laughing in the sunlight. Proof that even after the deepest freeze, some part of life still knows how to thaw. And above my window, the silver button swayed, glinting against the wood like a small sun. It was enough. End.